I'm an over-the-road trucker that spends most of my time hauling lumber and construction materials. For this load, I was heading to Virginia to deliver some lumber for a new building. It was pretty late at night, and my time clock said I needed to call it quits for the day, and luckily, there was a little truck stop a couple miles up the road. I pulled in and immediately noticed how rundown the place looked. It was a very small truck stop with a couple gas pumps and a small diner. There were probably only 2 or 3 trucks there and tons of open spots. I decided to gas up while I had the chance, since there was no one there, and by the morning there would probably be a big line, but who knows with how deserted this place was. I set my air brakes, got out of my truck, and started to pump gas. These pumps were some of the slowest I've ever used. It was pumping out a gallon of gas every 20 seconds, which is incredibly slow when you have 2 big 150-gallon tanks. I decided to wait in the truck while it pumped, since this was going to take a while. About 3 minutes later, I get startled by someone knocking on my passenger window. I jump, but I see an old man waving and pointing at the gas pump. I roll down the window and say, "How you doing, sir?" He replied and told me that these specific gas pumps were supposedly out of service and shouldn't be used. I asked why, and he told me the gas pumps haven't been used in months, and the gas sitting in the tanks underground was contaminated. I immediately hopped out of my truck and stopped the gas pump. The pump read 9 gallons, and I just thought to myself, great, now I have contaminated fuel in my truck which could possibly ruin it. I thanked the old man and got back in my truck. I fired up my truck and drove as quick as possible to the parking spot and shut off my truck again. I sat there contemplating what I should do. I eventually called a local tow company that was in the area and explained the situation. They told me they'd send someone out to siphon the gas out of the tanks and add some fresh gas to get me to the next station in the morning. While I waited, I decided to go into the diner and get a coffee and maybe a small late-night snack. The inside of the diner was disgusting, and I couldn't believe how dirty it was, but I needed something to keep me awake till the tow company showed up. I ordered a coffee with creamer and a stack of pancakes. The waitress was very monotone and didn't seem like she enjoyed the job at all. She brought out my food and coffee. I grabbed my silverware and started to cut into the pancakes, and immediately noticed how cold they were. I asked the waitress if these were fresh, and she said no, the stove broke earlier tonight and she had to warm them up in the microwave. I guess the microwave doesn't work either, because these were cold and not warm at all. I sighed, took a sip of the coffee, and same thing, ice cold. I sat there for a second, and then started to laugh to myself, thinking how could this night get any worse. I just left the food how it was and paid the waitress and went back out to my truck. I sat in my truck watching YouTube and just relaxing when I saw the service truck pull into the lot. I stepped out of my truck and waved him down. He pulled in next to me and got out of his truck. He was looking at me with a surprised look that something was wrong. I asked him how his night was, and he told me it was going well. He then added, "You're not from around here, are you?" I replied and said, "No, I'm not." He did this slight head nod, like he was disappointed, and started to siphon my gas from the tanks. I jokingly asked him, "Why is it so obvious that I'm not from here?" And what he told me still gives me the chills. He said this truck stop was linked to a number of murders and closed down for public safety. A man would break into truckers' cabs and murder them in their sleep. The cops suspected the owner of the truck stop, but couldn't find any good evidence. They searched for a couple months, but eventually decided to open back up since this was the only truck stop for miles on this highway. He suggested that as soon as I get this gas pumped out and get some fresh gas in, to follow him back into town where he knew a well-lit spot truckers like to park. I thanked him and waited the rest of my time in my truck till he was done with my gas tanks. He knocked on my window and told me to follow him. I started up my truck and followed him. As promised, he led me to a well-lit parking lot with probably 20 trucks parked. I parked in a spot and shut off my rig. I locked my doors and tried to go to sleep, but I was wide awake thinking of how crazy this night has been. And as unfortunate as it was, I was also lucky at the same time having to call that guy to help me. Without him, I would have never known, and who knows, I might have been another victim. Either way, this is one of the craziest things that has happened to me. My dad was a trucker back in 2016. He would mostly do long haul or over the road deliveries and would be gone for weeks at a time. As I grew up, I started to enjoy hearing his stories and learning what it takes to be a truck driver. I started researching more and more and eventually came to the conclusion that I could be a trucker for a full-time career when I grew up. At the time of this story, I was only 13. My dad enjoyed my interest in his job and told me he would take me on a delivery sometime to show me what it's like. So fast forward a couple weeks, and we're taking a load from San Antonio, Texas to Tampa, Florida. I was really excited and enjoyed being in such a high up truck. It really gives a different perspective when out on the road. My dad showed me all the different buttons and what they did in the truck. He was really giving me the full experience. About 11 hours in, we pulled off to a rest stop because my dad said he was running out of driving time. I guess truckers can only drive a certain amount per day. So we pull into this cool truck stop with tons of trucks, gas pumps, and a big store in the center. He parked the truck and asked if I wanted to see the inside of the store. Of course I said yes, and we got out and headed in. The store was filled with all kinds of stuff that you can put on your truck, a place to take showers, multiple food options, and a nice rest area with lounge chairs. We grabbed something to eat and headed back out to the truck. My dad had a TV in the back of his truck that we turned on and started watching a movie. About halfway through the movie, we hear this really loud bang and smashing sound. We both jump up and look out the front windshield. Not even 20 feet from our truck was a minivan that went head-on with a telephone pole. The car was destroyed and there was no way whoever was driving had a chance to survive. My dad told me not to look and go back to watching the movie. My dad closed the curtains in the cab and got out of the truck and slammed the door. I peeked my head through the curtains and see him running towards the crashed car. He went around to what was left of the driver's side, and about 3 minutes later he emerged from the side of the car with the driver in his arms. She was badly hurt, but she was somehow still alive by some miracle. My dad called the ambulance, waited till they got there, and then got back in the truck and told me what had happened. She was conscious enough to tell my dad that she must have fallen asleep at the wheel and didn't know how she got there. The lady was taken to the hospital, and we never heard from her again, but I just pray that she made a full recovery. This story sticks with me and I think about it from time to time. It made me realize what kind of stuff that truckers see on a daily basis. I was a truck driver back in my 20s. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with my life yet, so I ended up getting into trucking because I heard the money was good. At the beginning of my time as a truck driver, the pay was pretty bad, and being away from home would get lonely. I think my favorite part of the job overall was seeing new states and talking to other truckers. I've definitely seen a lot of stuff while trucking, such as getting brake checked, road rage, car crashes, sketchy people trying to get into your truck, and the list goes on. But one of the encounters sticks out to me the most. I was at a rest stop. I just gassed up my truck and was ready to turn in for the night. I got comfortable in the cab of my truck. I cooked a microwave dinner and sat down to watch some TV while I ate. About 5 minutes later, I can hear a tapping noise coming from the side of my truck. At first, I just assumed it was another trucker doing something to their rig, so I just went back to watching TV. Another 5 minutes passed and I heard it again. I was done eating at this point, so I decided to climb to the front of my truck and look out the window. To my surprise, there was no one out there on either side of my truck, and the closest truck was parked 5 spots away. I got suspicious at this point, and I decided I needed to go take a walk around my truck and make sure no one was messing with my truck or cargo. I stepped out, did a full scan of the truck, and there was no one near me. I got back in my truck and shut off the TV, and laid down to start to fall asleep. As soon as I was dozing off, I hear the noise again, but this time, it was coming from the other side of my truck. It just sounded like a tapping noise, almost like a bird or animal was pecking at it. I brushed it off and was able to get about 3 hours of sleep before I woke up to my cabin light on. This freaked me out, and I immediately shot out of bed because this could only mean one of the doors was open. The driver door was ever so slightly cracked open. I called out, "Get out of here," hoping if someone was messing with me or trying to get in my truck it would scare them off. I slammed the door shut and triple checked that both doors were locked. I put my face against the window to look out to see if I could see anyone. I saw a person running in the opposite direction with a hoodie on. I was relieved that I caught him just in time before he got into my truck. That was until I looked down and realized my wallet was missing from the side pocket. I got out and sprinted in the direction the guy was running. I was yelling threats at him, and surprisingly I was catching up to him. He eventually dropped my wallet and I picked it up. I called the police and they came and searched for the man but never found him. I went back to my truck and my driver door handle had a lock-picking tool sticking out of it. I ripped it out and threw it in my truck. From this point on, when I would sleep at a rest stop, I would tie my seatbelt around the door handle as extra protection.